Okay, hello everyone. This is Dr. Sarita Jackson. Welcome to another episode of GRIIT Group Live. Today we're going to talk about foreign direct investment, FDI. One of the things in terms of my research for this year, looking at international trade trends, I also have been looking at some of the things that's been going on when it comes to foreign direct investment. And so today, just very quickly, very simply, going to just highlight what has been going on when it comes to global FDI, foreign direct investment, in the current context with the global health pandemic. So I just have some slides here that I want to show you, just so that we can get an understanding of what has been going on. So as I said, today's focus is on how FDI has been impacted by the global health pandemic. But before I even get into the figures, the first question is, well, why should we even care? Well, one, when we talk about foreign direct investment, now, as you know, I focus on trade, the import, the export of goods and services, buying, selling overseas. But another component is also about the role of capital and investing in different sectors in other countries. And the reason why this is such an important topic, especially now with the contraction of international trade, is that when it comes to FDI, foreign direct investment is very important because for many economies, it is actually a source where it does help to boost employment and grow economies. Also lead to economic development in the sense of, let's say, if you have investment in the healthcare industry, education, basically enhancing or improving the lives of citizens in other countries, investing in, let's say, programs to address things such as food security or food insecurity. So that's where foreign direct investment becomes helpful to a number of economies. Also, in terms of the next point, finance and technology, where many economies can get the technological know-how because of this infusion of capital. And then the last point, the capital flow. So just injecting additional capital into an economy so that that economy can grow and develop. However, there are other challenges. There are challenges that come with FDI. And a lot of times when I talk about foreign direct investment in my classes, I talk about some of the structures. I'm not going into too much detail here, but where I talk about how that capital, how that investment enters into a market, different incentive programs that governments offer. But I also say, well, there's also the flip side of it. So you have to look at each country individually and look at some of those results. So when it comes to FDI, and I'm mentioning the challenges because then you'll understand when I talk about what we've seen in terms of barriers or regulations restricting FDI, it will become clear. But for now, just looking at some of the challenges. And one is that there's concern about being too dependent for a local economy or a national economy to be too dependent on foreign capital. That may lead to my second point of the impact, the concern about what impact this may mean for a national level or local firms. Kind of the same thing as you see when it comes to international trade. When you're talking about the imports of a lot of goods and services, well, that creates competition for your local goods and service providers. So you see some of the same thing when it comes to foreign direct investment. And then the role, what impact that means for local businesses or local ownership. So this is just a very, very broad overview of the benefits and some of the challenges. But in terms of the FDI, so why we should even care. So just looking at the global trends, just the end of last year, that with the global financial flows globally, that for quarter three, quarter four, in other words, toward the end of 2019, we actually saw an increase in FDI flows from $383 billion to $439 billion. But when you look, now this is for the global trends as a whole. Now, individual countries have different results. Some countries, for example, here in the United States, there was actually an increase from quarter three to quarter four. But other countries, let's say South Africa, Italy, actually saw a decline, a decrease from quarter three to quarter four. But it wasn't until quarter four, at least, where we started hearing about what this coronavirus, what has just ballooned into a global health pandemic. So what in the world? As I said, that's where we started hearing a few, just things about this coronavirus. By the end of last year, I know definitely the early part of 2020, to the point that at least here in the United States and many countries, by March, that's where it really became a global pandemic where countries were paying attention. We were getting so much more information, still not as clear as to what was going on, but at least getting more information, hearing more about the coronavirus or COVID-19, to the point that by March, the end of March, for many countries, each slightly different, but at least for here in the United States, by March, that's where where many of the states in the United States started to move toward what's called shelter in place, encouraging anyone who may have come in contact with someone that they knew had the coronavirus or tested positive for coronavirus to quarantine for 14 days. And then for putting in measures, as I said earlier, in the United States, it differed from state to state. But for just generally speaking, moving toward the shelter in place where people stayed home, businesses that were not considered essential had to basically stop operating. Only essential business, such as, of course, health, in the area of healthcare, grocery stores, things of that nature, were allowed to continue to operate. But for the most part, things came to a screeching halt, which has had an impact on the economy, a ripple effect across the economy. So that's what we were saying. So then what happened when it came to foreign direct investment? These are just estimates looking at what has been going on. We're still midway in 2020, but the estimates have become, even for just this year alone, have become more dire in terms of foreign direct investment, where the United Nations had a much lower percentage in terms of what we could see in terms of the drop for 2020. And then by around April, that percentage increased to a 40% decline in foreign direct investment, where that drop would have global FDI at less than $1 trillion. And we haven't seen that, at least according to the most recent report put out by the United Nations, since 2005. So that lets you know that we are really seeing a huge decline, or when it comes to FDI. Then what are the expectations for 2021? To see that FDI to drop by another 5%. Now, of course, this is contingent on what happens with the global health pandemic, how countries are able to address this, if we are able to bring it under control, because there are a number of regions where you're seeing a spike in cases within the same country, spikes in cases in different regions within the country. So there's so many other factors, of course, to take into account. But just based on the current context, the current conditions, this is what we are seeing, that for this year alone, a 40% drop in foreign direct investment. Next year, another 5%, and it is estimated that we won't see recovery until 2022. So that's what we can expect, at least again, under the current conditions. Now, during the pandemic, and I'm just going to mention this briefly, I've talked about it in some of my research that has been published, but one of the things that we've seen in some of the countries, trade, before I talk about FDI here, that when it comes to trade, we've seen a contraction in international trade because of trade barriers, travel restrictions. We've also seen the same when it comes to foreign direct investment, where some countries actually impose or tighten the regulations during the pandemic. So here's one such case. It's not the only one, but one such case in a report published by the World Trade Organization with India. And the quote, the government amended its foreign direct investment policy in order to curb takeovers or acquisitions of Indian companies as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The amendment provides that an entity of a country that shares a land border with India, or where the beneficial owner of an investment into India is situated in or is a citizen of any such country, can invest only with prior government permission. So I mentioned that so that if anyone is looking, okay, well, because I've had several conversations as recently as yesterday about FDI within the international context, and one of the things that I point out is that, you know, I hear a lot about the mergers and acquisitions and foreign direct investment, etc., but it's still important to take into account exactly what is going on when it comes to the policies in different countries pertaining to FDI within the current context. But that doesn't mean that you should just ignore or not stop thinking about FDI altogether. The key points, just 3 points that I want to mention here, as I've just shown you, that yes, FDI, foreign direct investment, has slowed down with the pandemic, and then the predictions for next year that there will be a further increase in terms of the contraction of FDI and a possible recovery in 2022. Things may change depending on the situation, but at least that's what we have to look forward to with the current data. That just aligns with what we've seen when it comes to international trade altogether in different industries. You've seen where trade has slowed down, travel restrictions have had an impact. But at the same time, I do encourage anyone that's in the space of FDI, of investing in different sectors, industries, and other countries, to still look at what is going on in different countries, because there are key sectors where there may be, and let me just clarify that, where there will be opportunities post-crisis. And I talk about some of that in a recent piece that was published pertaining to the digital economy and trade and services that was published in the World Financial Review, a UK-based publication. So you can just look that up, World Financial Review, type in my name, and you will find that article where I do talk about some of the industries where there are opportunities for investment so that it will have an impact, going back to the points that I mentioned earlier on not just economic growth, but economic development. So just check out that piece at your earliest convenience, and you can get some more insight in terms of those sectors that I talk about. And so now, just wrapping up before I go to see who's logged on and everything, is a from the what to how. So basically here, what I've just talked about right now is just to highlight the trends of what we are seeing when it comes to foreign direct investment. This is leading to a series. I have a very great team that has been helpful, oh gosh, for the last few months. And so I'm excited that we're now getting ready to get into some things on my YouTube channel that gets to the how. A lot of times I talk about the what, I'll give a few tips, but to dig deeper in terms of how to do what I'm talking about on these GRIIT Group Lives. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, because I will be talking about foreign direct investment. Now, I'm not going to give advice. This is not to give advice on investment strategies or different types of investments or things like that. Rather, just to talk about how to focus on what are some of the key sectors and how to get involved. And so if you follow the GRIIT YouTube channel, just follow it, subscribe to it, and then you will get an announcement regarding a new series that's starting very, very soon on trade and FDI in services, tips for services-based firms. So if you're wondering how do I find you on YouTube, just look for the name of the company, Global Research Institute of International Trade. Subscribe. You will also see some of the other GRIIT Group live sessions posted, my interviews with guest experts, my unfiltered interviews with people in different countries that we're talking about, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. Things have changed since then, but just talking about their experience, what was going on in their particular country and particular industry. So again, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just go to Global Research Institute of International Trade and subscribe, and then you will learn more about both trade and FDI in the services area, the services sector, and get tips on exactly how to go about getting involved in these two areas. So just subscribe to that and you will get additional information moving from what to how. So I'm going to check over here now that I'm off of my screen share, just see who's on. If there are any questions or comments, so let me just check here on the Facebook Live before I log off. Okay. Okay, it's still loading here, but I do see that people are logged on, so I just want to say hello, and I'm trying to get it to load so that I will see if there are any comments. Okay, here we go. Let's see, because I do not want to leave without answering any questions or at least acknowledging those of you who have joined me again for another session of GRIIT Group Live. Okay, so I see a number of people that have liked and shared the session. So thank you so much for those of you who continue to join and show your support and always share the sessions. So let me just make sure that there aren't any questions here. Okay, so I don't see any questions for now. So thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. And if there are any other questions, comments for me pertaining to GRIIT Group Live, I'm just trying to load one last time here. Okay. If there are any additional questions or comments, feel free to go ahead even after the live session comes to an end. Feel free to raise your question, write a comment in the comment section below, and I will make sure I do check regularly and I can still answer your questions after the fact. And this video will also be posted on the YouTube channel that I shared with you. The link is also in the description of today's session. And so I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Dr. Sarita Jackson with GRIIT Group Live at the Global Research Institute of International Trade. Bye-bye.